If you're an artist, producer, or engineer, there are a few mindsets that will absolutely hold you back going into 2026. I've made all of these mistakes myself, so in this video, I want to talk about 5 things that I'm not bringing into the next year. These are not meant to be trends or hot takes, but real stuff that actually affects your creativity and your music career. All right, the first thing that we are not doing in 2026 is obsessing with new plugins. I feel like every 30 seconds on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, I'm getting an ad from another brand new company that has a groundbreaking technology or new plugin that is going to dramatically change the way that you mix and produce and make music. This is of course happening with a lot of the big legacy companies as well, but we are constantly bombarded with advertisements from the companies themselves as well as influencer engineers and producers and musicians out there that are paid to push these products in front of you. And to be honest with you, these are just things that you don't need. I feel like so many artists, producers, and engineers these days will look to absolutely anything else but improving their skill set and improving their ear for music. And we'll spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a year to escape the reality that we just need to improve our skills. We just need to get better. We need more time. We need to actually, believe it or not, practice our craft at scale. This, of course, is going to affect new engineers, producers, musicians, and artists more than anyone else. And that, to me, is the biggest shame, that a lot of these advertisements are directed towards people who just need a bit more time. Another 3 months working out how an EQ works, and they'd be perfectly fine. And I'm preaching to myself here as well, but I do really wish that more creatives would realize that they probably have more of the tools that they need than they think they do. You can do some pretty incredible things with stock plugins and stock instruments. You don't have to get FabFilter Pro Q15 whenever it comes out. You can probably make do with your stock EQ. Don't feel the pressure to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on new plugins if what you have works really well for you. The newest, shiniest object isn't always the best one for the job. I personally, for those reasons, as well as just financial reasons, have put a complete freeze on buying new plugins that I don't need. I've realized over time that the return on investments for the shiniest, newest, like AI-based plugin is not as much as you think it is, and that money and time is much better spent deepening my understanding of the craft that I'm working on in the first place. And speaking of AI, let's talk about the second thing that we're not bringing into this new year. And that simply is a fear of AI. This is such a hot topic, so I'm kind of buckling up for the comments on this one, but we have to get into it. We can't just ignore AI. It's here, it's right in front of us, and quite honestly, it's here to stay in some capacity. Now, whether you use generative AI or utility AI in your creative process is a huge subject for another video where we can deep dive into the whole thing. But for today, I want to keep it pretty simple. I am very well aware that there are many people, creatives especially, that are fearful of AI coming for their jobs, and even less than that, just coming for their hobbies. I'm also very well aware that AI is in its very early stages, whether we like it or not, and it is only going to get dramatically better at what it does. But here's the silver lining, and one of the big reasons why I'm not fearful of AI going into this year. Generative AI does not create from a vacuum, from a void. It needs human input. It takes data and IP from millions of different sources, whether it's allowed to or not, and creates new sonics from signals that already exist. Artists that have already been heard, session musicians that have already played on records, vocalists and songwriters who have already sung and written these songs. AI will always need data and information from sounds that have already been created, which means socially and culturally, and more importantly, sonically, it will always be behind you. Now, I will say this, in really simple, basic, and commercial spaces, it's likely that AI is going to become very prominent, as it's far cheaper and more efficient for companies and brands and corporations to utilize AI to build the music side of their sync and their commercial placements. So if you have made a living making what I'll call simple, basic pop structures for Coca-Cola commercials, then it's likely that a heavy pivot for you is due. But this is also just the next practical step, as that space for sync licensing and commercial placement has become so saturated by the ease of access for musicians and artists and producers in that space. That world is just going to become even more noisy as generated music makes its way onto those platforms. Now, currently speaking, some labels and a few publishers have completely banned AI, at least on the production side, while still allowing some AI to help with lyrics and stuff like that. But there are some companies that are already putting some barriers to AI music being placed within their library. But in my opinion, this is most likely not forever, and laws and regulations and logistics will be updated in order to make room for this new medium that is generated music, even in the corporate and commercial world. So to be honest, a lot of the music that will be replaced by AI is the music that is already kind of replaceable and generic. And to be honest, there's not a lot that you're going to be able to do about that. The positive side to this, because of what I stated earlier, that AI is always behind the newest creative expression, is that if you are genuinely talented, and actually far beyond talent in this case, if you are genuinely authentically creative and different and nuanced and quirky in the way that you go about your processes, if you are constantly trying to push the boundaries of your own creative expression with the instruments that you play and the voice that you have and your ability to write music, then you will constantly and continually be in demand in this industry. Because the thing that makes genuinely good creative music is not the perfections, it's not the ability to surgically hone in on something like AI will get very, very good at. It's actually in the random flaws and mistakes and weird experiences that we have as humans that we can only then apply to the random instruments and tools that are in front of us. There's some things that AI is going to get very, very good at. And if you are in the line of things that it's really good at, then you need to find some quick ways to adapt your skill sets in order to keep yourself at the forefront. But there's also some limitations and some things that it's going to struggle with as it strives every single time to be in line with your prompt exactly. All while a lot of the true creative nuances in music happen in the gaps of communication, in the gaps of storytelling, and the gaps of being able to communicate with an instrument and relay emotion to people through what you're doing creatively and with the tools that you're using. Perfect and too surgical is not necessarily a great thing when it comes to music and authentic creative expression, which is why I'm personally not too worried about AI, although there's a lot of other sides to this discussion that we need to do a whole other video on, and I'll do that very, very soon. All right, the next thing that we are not doing in this year is chasing the algorithm, the gods of social media. We're not chasing trends. It is time to build an identity around what you do. Every single person out there has their own sound, their own skill sets, their own family that they grew up in, their own perspective on the world and society, their own experience within culture and within their environment. All of these different experiences and inspirations that are constantly around you are what shape who you are, how you communicate, and how you sound as you express yourself creatively. My advice to any creative out there, especially if you're a newer creative or just joining the industry and getting into engineering, production, session work, songwriting, whatever it may be, is to focus more on understanding yourself, your skill sets, your strengths, and building an identity around your creative expression. Find the things, in this case in music, that you truly excel at, and also that you just truly enjoy and can execute at scale and do it en masse. To give a quick personal example, for me, that's synthesizers. I was a classically trained pianist from the age of 6 all the way through 19. The first instrument that I ever bought for myself was a synthesizer. It was an old Korg micro Korg with a vocoder. I've played piano and synths for largely my entire life. I also have an affinity and a love for 80s music and 80s sound design. So it's come very natural for me to build an identity and a business around synthesis and 80s sound design. And now 13 plus years in as a professional producer and session musician, that is a huge cornerstone of why people come to me with their music and with their projects. They don't just want any other musician out there, they are coming to me for me. There's millions of people that play guitar and drums and are pretty good at piano and synths and are decent engineers, why are people going to come to you? It's generally going to be one of two things. One, that you are genuinely one of the best at your craft and you're incredibly proficient in the thing that you have worked so hard at, and or you have a very distinct style and sound and sonic profile to what you do creatively. I have seen so many producers and session musicians and engineers that have come and gone very, very quickly in a blink of an eye through social media and in my own kind of network because of the fact that they chased the algorithm and they chased trends and trying to just be the next thing that was happening instead of actually just building a solid foundation in skill and in creative choices that people will gravitate towards and that they will actually follow. I also truly believe that if more producers, engineers, and musicians created more chaotically and more messy and spontaneously, that we would get better art. Because so many artists and producers, especially starting out, are really pursuing a specific sound and specific trend, I do feel that we kind of sterilize and flatten a lot of creative expression where everything starts to kind of sound the same because everyone is just vying for attention, they're vying for the algorithm, they're vying for exposure and money and fame instead of truly loving the art and allowing that to rise to the surface. The next thing that we are not going to do going into this next year, and I am deeply preaching to myself, is having an ego about working alone. This is something that I am really guilty of, and it's something that I'm actively trying to improve on right now. For me personally, I am a songwriter, I am a multi-instrumentalist, I am a studio-trained audio engineer. So it is very easy for me to just want to do everything myself. And to be honest, oftentimes that's worked really well for me in my business and in my own personal creativity. But as the world becomes so much more isolated and less collaborative, I think it's more important than ever that we connect with each other, we work together to make the best possible art. I think one of the hardest parts about this truly is just trusting other people, their personalities, also just their skill sets as well, especially if there's something that you really shine at and you're very good at. It can be important to not get into creative environments and collaborative environments where y'all are stepping on each other's toes and stepping on each other's opinions a whole lot. That is not oftentimes going to create the best artistic expression anyways. But I do think in this modern age of social media where there really is such a lack of unity, such a lack of empathy, and a lot of disconnection from each other, even in the rise of AI and other things like that, people are even more, like a lot of creatives are pretty isolated and pretty like self-centered and maybe a little bit more introverted. I can tend to be that way myself. And so with the rise of these other things, just so much turmoil in the world, as well as so much going on with AI, a lot of people are isolating even further, and I really don't think that that's good for art. I don't think it's good for creativity. I don't think it's good for humanity and society and culture as a whole. I think in this day and age, we have to fight to be connected. We have to fight to not isolate ourselves creatively. And that's personally one thing that I am going to work on going into this next year, is connecting more, networking more, collaborating more, building trust and experience and amazing art with many different people from all different backgrounds. Some of the best art and creativity in history has come from incredible collaborations and many of the best minds in these different crafts coming together to make beautiful, culturally impactful art that changes the way people see the world. So if you find yourself drawing back and retreating and isolating as a creative, I would challenge you to reach out to people, connect with people, network, join communities, join discords and forums, and build more of a connection with other creatives around the world and see how that doesn't improve and impact the way that you create. And the last thing that we are not going to do going into this next year is waiting for permission or waiting to be ready before we do something. I truly believe that people love a journey. They love an adventure. They love a story. They love to see growth and improvement over time. So if you are someone who is new to this industry, or you're someone who you perceive yourself as maybe a bit more amateur at your craft, I would encourage you to just dive in, go head first and start doing the thing. If you're a new audio engineer and you just started learning how to mix on YouTube or something like that, start taking on clients, maybe for free. Maybe you do your first 25 mixes completely for free, no points, no nothing, no strings attached, to just execute the craft and get great at what you're doing. And then maybe you take on another 10 mixes at $25, and then another 10 mixes at $50. And then you start to grow and improve from there. But you have enough repetition and enough volume under your belt that you are genuinely improving on your craft. I feel like so many people feel like if I didn't do the school, if I haven't watched enough courses, if I haven't seen enough YouTube videos, that I'll never be able to actually do it. And they're trying to wait for some moment to arrive that they're worthy of taking on clientele and starting to work in the business. I would just say, get the ball rolling and get started. That's how nearly every professional engineer, producer, and musician and songwriter and artist got started. They just started releasing. They started executing in their craft at scale, at volume, in order to put themselves out there. If you are not putting yourself out there, then you don't exist to your potential clients and to the community and to the industry. If you're a beat maker or a producer, start sending out music at scale for free. Allow people to get on your music for free, build credibility, build a reputation, get some credits under your belt so people can trust that you're good at your craft, or at the very least willing to improve at your craft, and then start to build your catalog from there. And then maybe 5 years down the road, you're charging $500, $1,000 for an impactful, powerful, creative, nuanced production, but you never get there if you don't start early on with the free and the $25 and the $50 and the $100. You've got to start. All of that to say, in this day and age of social media, there's no reason at all why you shouldn't be putting your skills out there, showing what you do to people, even in the very early stages, so that you can start to garner a catalog of your work and garner even a very low-level clientele to start to build your business and your exposure as a musician, songwriter, producer, engineer, whatever it is that you might do. This year is not the year that you hold back, that you shy away from exposing people to what you're working on. This is the year that you put yourself out there and see what kind of success and attention you can garner for the thing that you're so in love with and so passionate about. It doesn't have to be polished, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be authentic, it just has to be real, and you have to be willing to grow and to learn. If you stuck around for the whole video, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it more than you know. If you like content like this, maybe about songwriting, creativity, artistry, being a producer, audio engineer, session musician, synthesis, one of my favorite things in the world is talking about synths. So if you want more synth videos, let me know down in the comments. But if you like content like this, definitely don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like this video. Hopefully, we'll be able to see you very, very soon. Peace.